find 2 Corinthians and find the 9th chapter. When you found it, please stand. 2 Corinthians, find the 9th chapter. I'm going to read verses 6 through 8. Have I found it? But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or out of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency in all things may have an abundance for every good work. You may be seated. Once a year, I am asked to put together a sermon on giving. Once a year. And they have to ask me to do it. For those of you that have been going here for years, you will witness and attest to those who have not been here, that not once have you ever heard us ask for money. Not once have we ever got up and said it's offering time and God's been good to you. Not once have you ever heard us say, you can't beat God, give it. You haven't heard that. You won't hear that. They have to make me teach on giving. There's a reason why they have to make me teach on giving. And it's found in verse 7. So the first thing I want to do is I want to dispel something. For those of you that have heard this in church, everyone give whatever God has put on your heart to give. Look at verse 7. So let each one give as he purposes in his own heart. For those of you that haven't heard one of these sermons, yeah, I'm a little different. Now let me say this up front. People have heard me on the radio, and they have heard me say to our visitors, leave your money in the car. The reason I say that is because if you have a church home, that's where you should take your money. All right? I also believe that you should support your local church. If you don't have a church, it's up to you whether or not you give, whatever you purpose in your heart. The title of this sermon is called Fleecing the Sheep. Fleecing the Sheep. Now in the past, I've done stuff like pimps in the pulpit, things like that. Today's sermon is a little different. This is more teaching. I would advise you to take notes because you're going to want to go back and check out what I'm saying. Fleecing the sheep. First of all, the Bible calls us sheep. Sheep are the dumbest animals on the planet. Bottom line, if the sheep don't have a shepherd, they can't survive. Interestingly enough, we're called sheep. Shepherds watch over sheep for the purpose of getting the wool that grows on them as well as food. But I want you to think about something. In order for a shepherd to get the wool off of the sheep, what the shepherd actually does, now remember the sheep don't even know what's going on. The shepherd will wash the sheep first. That's to get out any of the grime that may have come out of the ground, so that when they go to shear them, and they go to cut the wool off, it goes through pretty easy. All right? So they wash them first. The sheep has no idea what's going on. Before the sheep knows it, all their fleece is gone. The reason we use the term fleecing the sheep when it comes to the church is because the same process happens to Christians. There are shepherds, and when they go to shear the sheep, they wash sheep with emotion. And after they've washed your emotion to get rid of any resistance to the cutting, before you know what has happened, your money's gone. What happens? I don't believe that we'll be able to get through everything today, but we're going to try to do what we can, and we'll come back again on next week. But let me tell you how I got to this point. I've never shared this with you guys. Every ministry has something that catapults it into becoming something. I've grown up in church. I mean, when I say I grew up in church, I mean, I was christened as a baby, and my mother played the piano and sang in church. My grandparents, my grandfather, his name is on the cornerstone at New Hope Baptist Church in Greenville, Texas. I have some extremely famous uncles that are preachers. I mean, church has been a part of my life all my life. I got a part of my family, the Moss family, that are known for their gospel music. Y'all know J. Moss, y'all know the Clark sisters, all of them. So church has been a part of my life forever, far back as I can remember. I was watching TV. I must have been about 26, 27. And I heard this man say, sow a seed of faith. Never heard that before. Like, what is that? And I heard him talking about, if you want your problem fixed, sow a seed of faith. I was totally confused. I'd never heard that before. So I started wondering about that. The same day that I heard that, there was a knock on the door. It was Jehovah's Witnesses. Had a 30-minute conversation with them. They told me some stuff I knew was wrong. Problem was, I just couldn't show them why. So I went back to my church that next Sunday, 33 preachers, over 50 deacons in this church, and nobody could give me any answers from witnesses, and nobody could really tell me anything about this sowing seed. So what did I do? I went to the bookstore, got some books, started reading, and lo and behold, the opportunity came for me to enter into seminary, and I did. Went all the way from seminary, got ready to graduate, and was given that final paper, that dissertation that you have to do in order to get your master's. And I was given 3 topics from which I could write on. One of them was tithing. And I said to myself, I know this. I got this. Got no problem with this. I can almost write this, but they're going to make me go and get all of these 15 references. Good thing they did. After I went through, and after I finished that paper, when I turned it in, I said, I'm getting an F. Because I have totally blown out everything I've ever heard about giving in this paper. I'm in trouble. That paper went to the president of the seminary. Dr. Couch got that paper. And Dr. Couch gave me the paper back himself. Before he gave it to me, he shook my hand and he said, finally, somebody has looked. Like, what? He gave me the paper, it had an A-. The minus was for some of the grammar. The way I constructed some of the sentences. But he had on there content A+, overall grade A-. Whenever I teach on this, I know I lose friends in the preaching world. Now this is going out over the radio, so those friends that I thought I had, I may lose them as well. I have looked at the process that has been used on Christians for giving, and I find that there are 3 things. It's very simple. Number 1, we are given an emotional problem. Some kind of an emotional problem. It usually revolves around 3 areas. Either your relationships, or your finances, or your health. Something that hits all of us. All of us have issues in relationships. And they lead us to some bad emotions. We've had breakups. We've had people that don't like us. I love it when people stand up and tell us the enemy's been after you. People are talking about you. You're being lied on. It's never your fault, though. Have you ever noticed that? You have been totally righteous and totally good. You're just being persecuted. But God's word, see, this is the second part, there has to be a promise. And the promise has to come from God. So, but God's word says that God will deliver you. There's always deliverance from the emotional issue. Don't you love it when you flip on the TV and somebody says, somebody out there has a back problem or their knee is hurt? Who in here doesn't have a problem with your back if you've gotten 40 years old? When is your knee not hurting at some point in time? There's something in your shoulder, you're having headaches. All of this stuff comes with age. Now here's the deal. The way it works, in your 20s, you usually don't make much money. Check this out with the Department of Labor. The money that you make usually comes in your 30s and your 40s and starts to tail off when you get into your 50s. It's in your 30s and 40s when your health starts to act funny. You just can't keep the weight off. Issues start coming up. And this is used as a tool in order to get you emotional. Your finances just aren't working. Whose finances actually work? Does it not create some kind of consternation in you? That you're not able to do everything you want to do? See, they don't even go to the fact that maybe you can pay your bills, but see, you want to take a trip, but you can't. That's always the enemy, by the way. And God has deliverance, which gets to part 3. And this is the part that gets me. You see, you are taken on this emotional roller coaster because, first of all, you are brought down into despair because emotionally you can't get rid of this problem and it's killing you. And then there's the promise of deliverance, so you come up. And now here comes the key. We're going to activate God's working in your life by sowing a seed of faith. That doesn't always come out that way. In the traditional church that I grew up in, it comes out in other ways. Use the word tithing. They tell us, if you tithe, then God will bless you. Heard that all my life. Lived by it. Broke my neck to do it. Made sure that a tenth of whatever I had was coming out. I had to. Why? Because I wanted God to bless me. Emotionally, I was distraught because I wasn't blessed. God promised that he would bless me if I tithe. So tithe. And in the traditional church, what's really beautiful is that, now this is old school, y'all. I go way back. They still do this way out in the country. They might still do this some places, but you walk in church, they have your name up on the wall with the amount you gave last week, year to date. So what I want to do, let's first talk about the tithe. I want to talk about the tithe before the law, during the law, and after the law. So, turn to Genesis chapter 14. Find verse 18. We'll talk about a man by the name of Abram. Genesis 14, verse 18. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now, this is what had happened. Sodom had been overrun by some kings. And in it, they had taken Lot. Now, Lot was Abram's nephew. So some kings got together from Sodom, Gomorrah, and 3 other kings. They got together to go fight these 4 kings. And they didn't do too well.